Picture this. You're a 10-year-old boy living in a quiet village nestled between the snowy peaks of eastern Armenia in the winter of 1602. The air smells of burning wood and warm bread. Your father carves wooden toys by the fire while your mother hums lullabies passed down for generations. You think the world is small, kind, and yours. Then, just before dawn, the silence breaks. The pounding of boots, the crack of torches, and the sound of men yelling in a language you don't understand. Your father pushes you under the floorboards. You see his face, not afraid, but defeated. Soldiers storm the house, rip open every hiding spot. When they pull you from the darkness, your mother screams like something sacred has been broken. You're thrown into a cart with other boys, crying, shivering, too stunned to fight. As the village fades behind you, you realize no one is coming. Not now. Not ever. This is not a nightmare. This is your new beginning, one carved in silence, submission, and stolen breath. What happened to you that morning wasn't rare. It was a system. A machine built to tear children from their families, silence their pasts, and reshape them into obedient vessels for someone else's glory. Thousands of boys across empires were taken in the same way, young, wide-eyed, and full of stories that would soon be erased. You weren't chosen because you were special. You were chosen because you were beautiful, quiet, and easy to break. What came next wasn't education. It wasn't opportunity. It was a slow unraveling of everything you thought was safe. Before we explore what awaited you behind those grand stone walls, take a moment to realize this: history doesn't always wear a crown. Sometimes it wears the face of a child taken too soon. If stories like this move you, don't forget to share, comment where you're listening from, and subscribe for more hidden truths like this. The cart groans beneath you as it creaks over frozen dirt roads. You can't see where you're going, just the backs of boys crammed beside you, their knees pressed against their chests, arms wrapped around their bodies for warmth they can't find. The wood beneath you cuts into your skin, and every bump on the road feels like a slap against your bones. You've lost feeling in your feet. No one speaks. No one cries anymore. That stopped on the second day. A boy named Iskan sat next to you on the first night. He was older, 12, maybe 13, and whispered stories of his sister back home, of swimming in the river during summers, of apricot trees that smelled like heaven when the wind was right. He tried to stay hopeful. By the third day, his voice was gone. By the fifth, so was he. They left his body on the side of the road without ceremony. One of the guards spit in the dirt beside it. Another joked that the wolves would get a good meal tonight. You didn't look back. None of you did. That was your first lesson in survival. Don't look. Don't remember. You were allowed to leave the cart twice a day, once at dawn, once at dusk, to relieve yourselves. During these stops, boys collapsed from exhaustion. Some begged the guards to let them go back. Others simply lay down and refused to move. The guards used whips on those who resisted. Those who didn't get up were left behind. That's how you learned your second lesson: pain is better than being forgotten. If you can still scream, you're still alive. On the sixth day, the cart got stuck in a ravine. You were forced to walk. The snow burned your legs like fire. Your shoes had long since disintegrated, and the ice bit into your toes until you couldn't feel them. You walked in silence, one foot in front of the other, because thinking was too painful. Thinking meant remembering. Thinking meant wondering where you were going and what waited on the other side of this frozen hell. Some boys started to hum under their breath. Others muttered prayers from religions you didn't recognize. One whispered to his own shadow like it was a friend. You began to see that sanity was not something you could hold on to. It slipped through your fingers like breath in the cold air. On the eighth night, they brought you to a ruined outpost. No roof, just four broken walls and a floor littered with frozen hay. The wind cut through the stone like it had blades. You huddled with other boys for warmth. One tried to run. He didn't make it past the edge of the courtyard. The guards caught him, stripped him, and beat him in front of the rest of you. He didn't scream. He just stared at the moon like he'd already left his body. When they were done, he didn't move. They let the snow bury him. You told yourself he was lucky. By the 10th day, your body wasn't your own anymore. You didn't feel hunger the same way. You didn't feel fear, at least not sharply. It became a constant fog, something you lived inside. You stopped thinking of time as hours or days. You thought in steps, one step forward, then another. If you could still take steps, you hadn't lost. Not yet. Then came the river crossing. You remember the water, black as ink, fast, angry. A wooden raft waited for you, held together with ropes and frozen mud. The guards made you strip before getting on. Your clothes were lice-ridden and filthy, but they were all you had. The air cut into your naked skin like glass. You crossed with 10 others, packed so tight on the raft that you couldn't move. One boy slipped on the edge and fell in. The water took him instantly. No splash, no scream, just gone. The guard watching shrugged. "Less food to ration," he said. That night, your skin cracked from the cold. You watched boys cough blood. Frostbite took fingers. But your mind, if you can keep your mind, it's the only thing they can't take. Or so you thought. On the 13th day, the carts returned. Smaller now, fewer boys. You noticed that the guards stopped counting you every night. They already knew how many would be missing by morning. The landscape changed too. No more forests or snow-covered valleys. Now jagged hills rose like broken teeth, and the wind carried the scent of stone and ash. It smelled like the end of something. That's when you first saw the city. It rose from the hills like a mirage. Towers, minarets, domes, all gleaming gold and silver in the winter sun. You heard some boys gasp. Others wept. You felt nothing. Not because the city wasn't beautiful, it was, but because you already knew beauty meant danger. Beauty meant power. Beauty meant pain. As you neared the city gates, the carts slowed. Guards fixed your hair, wiped dirt from your faces, and handed you thin wool cloaks. For the first time in 2 weeks, you looked in the mirror. You didn't recognize the face staring back. Hollow eyes, cracked lips, a child who had already begun to disappear. They lined you up in front of a grand courtyard. Stone columns reached toward the sky. The gates behind them were taller than any tree you'd ever seen. They called out names, foreign, strange names you'd never heard before. One by one, boys were taken inside. Some tried to run. They didn't get far. You were number 17. The guard looked you over and hesitated. "Too small," he muttered. Then, after a pause, "But pretty. They'll want him." That was the moment you stopped being a boy. You became a commodity, an object, a thing meant to please someone else. And still, the worst was yet to come. The palace did not feel like a place of learning. It felt like something alive, watching you from behind its marble walls, waiting for you to break. Everything was too clean, too polished, too silent. Even the birds that fluttered above the garden domes made no sound. It was not silence that comforted, it was silence that condemned. You were stripped of your name before stepping inside. The official who processed you was dressed in silk robes with gold-threaded cuffs. He did not speak your language, and he did not need to. He looked at the wooden tag tied to your wrist, the last trace of who you had been. He untied it, burned it in a shallow brazier, and scribbled something on a parchment. Then he looked up and said a single word, Sirhan. That was your new name. It meant nothing to you. It was not Armenian. It was not you. You tried to speak your old name once to remind yourself you still existed. A guard slapped you so hard your vision blurred. He said nothing. He didn't have to. You learned what the rules were that day. You would never say that name again, not even in your thoughts. Your old clothes were burned. Your wooden cross was confiscated. Your prayers were replaced. You were taught to press your forehead to the floor 5 times a day, to recite words you didn't understand. There was no explanation, only demonstration. You copied movements like a doll mimicking its puppeteer. If you faltered, a stick tapped your legs. If you hesitated, your meals were taken. The end-run school was spoken of with reverence, but the reverence was a mask. They called it a place for gifted boys, but they never asked what your gift was. They decided it. You were told what subjects you would study. You would learn Turkish, Arabic, and Persian. You would study math, astronomy, and music, but not to explore, not to grow, to serve. You learned to sleep with your eyes half open. The shadows moved when they weren't supposed to. Some boys never made it to morning roll call. When you asked where they'd gone, no one answered. That was another rule. Don't ask questions. Your instructors spoke with detached authority. They expected obedience, not curiosity. You were told when to wake, when to eat, when to speak, when to kneel. Your days were sliced into obedient little segments. Time no longer felt like a river. It felt like a box. There were older students assigned as supervisors. You learned to fear them more than the guards. They watched everything, how you dressed, how you walked, who you spoke to. If they reported you as uncooperative or slow to adapt, your life changed overnight. Your meals would be halved. Your books would disappear. You would be reassigned to cleaning chambers or emptying waste bins. One boy, Emre, was caught whispering in his native tongue during study hour. He wasn't punished in secret. They dragged him to the courtyard and made him stand with a sign around his neck, "Enemy of the Empire." Other students were ordered to spit at him. He didn't cry. He didn't flinch. That made them angrier. They shaved his head, cut his tunic, and transferred him to the lowest service group. You never saw him again. His name was erased from the roll the next morning. You learned that resistance didn't just lead to punishment, it led to erasure. Your first ceremony took place after your 10th day. You and 10 others were brought into a grand hall lined with mirrors and golden lanterns. The walls were covered in verses you couldn't read. An imam chanted prayers while a palace official read your new names aloud. You were told to kneel, to nod, to smile. You didn't understand the words, but you mimicked the others. That day, you were officially reborn. It was celebrated like a gift. It felt like a funeral. Afterward, you were taken to be fitted for your palace tunic. The tailor didn't ask your size. He measured you with his eyes, then wrapped silk around your chest like he was dressing a mannequin. You looked into the mirror and didn't recognize yourself. You looked like a servant in a story you never wanted to be in. Food was predictable but cold. Boiled grains, salted cheese, thin soup. No flavors, no joy. If you showed too much hunger, you were labeled greedy. If you didn't eat, you were scolded for wastefulness. Every choice was a trap. Every emotion had a consequence. Your first friend inside the walls was a boy named Tarek. He had almond skin and dark eyes that never stopped moving. He whispered to you during language drills, explaining words you didn't understand. He told you not to speak unless spoken to, not to stand too tall, not to finish tasks too quickly lest you draw attention. He said the key to survival was invisibility. But invisibility didn't last. On your 24th night, a man in green robes entered the dormitory. The supervisor stood to attention. The man pointed at Tarek. "That one," he said. No one explained why. Tarek didn't resist. He stood, adjusted his tunic, and walked away. You didn't see him again. The next day, his bed was stripped clean. His books were removed. You tried to ask where he had gone, but your voice cracked in fear before the words came. You stayed silent. That was another lesson. Grief is dangerous. Instructors began referring to you differently, not by name, but by potential. He has poise. He is obedient. He could be refined. They spoke like gardeners discussing which tree to prune, which flower to cage. You began to feel watched in a new way, not for disobedience, but for display. At mealtimes, guards observed you eating. During prayer, they noted your posture. They studied your hands, your walk, how you folded your bedding. It wasn't discipline, they were selecting something. You didn't know what yet. You repeated them like spells in your mind, over and over, hoping memory alone could keep you whole. But memory fades when you're punished for using it. One night, you dreamed of your home warmth, laughter, bread. You woke up with tears on your face and whispered your old name. The boy in the next bed heard you. His eyes widened. He didn't say a word. But the next day, your language workbook was missing. You found your shoes soaked in dirty water. You were last in line for lunch. You never said that name again. The palace was not just a place, it was a method, a design, a machinery built to shape you into something beautiful and broken, and the process had only just begun. It begins quietly, without threat, a whisper, a soft glance, a kindness offered at night when the halls are dark and the silence hums too loudly in your ears. His name is Aiden, an older boy, maybe 16. He brings you a folded blanket when your body trembles with fever. He offers dried figs from his pocket when your stomach aches in the evening. His words are warm, his voice steady. You begin to look for him in the morning, to listen for his steps at night. He tells you that he once cried, too, that he remembers what it felt like to be new and confused. He says he can protect you. All he asks in return is that you trust him. Trust becomes touch. At first, it's a hand on your shoulder when you've done well in class, then a gentle squeeze of your arm as you kneel for prayer. Then one night you wake to find him sitting on your bed. He smiles softly and says, "I just didn't want you to feel alone." His fingers trace the edge of your blanket. You freeze. You know something is wrong, but you don't know how to say no. And in this place, no one teaches you how to say no. Not when silence means safety, not when resistance is dangerous. He doesn't force anything. He only suggests. He only guides. You follow because it's easier than not knowing what happens if you don't. You follow because the alternative is isolation, punishment, or worse, being noticed by someone far more powerful than him. Some smirk knowingly. One spits at your feet during morning roll call. You don't understand the rules yet, but you know they've changed. Aiden walks with you now. You eat beside him. You are safer, and yet you are not. He begins to call you my boy. That's your second lesson. In the palace, guilt is a tool sharpened against your own spine. You try to ask an instructor about it once. You choose your words carefully, nervously. The man doesn't answer your question. Instead, he says you're fortunate to have a mentor. Many are not so lucky. Then he moves on. You realize there is no help coming. Not from the guards, not from the teachers, not from the men in robes who occasionally inspect the dorms with practiced smiles and predator eyes. What is happening to you is not a secret, it is an arrangement. One evening, Aiden is called to the upper quarters. When he returns, he looks older somehow. His face is pale. He doesn't speak. That night, he doesn't come to your bed. You wonder if you've done something wrong. You feel something that should be relief, but it isn't. The next day, he tells you that a new boy has arrived. He'll need someone, he says. He doesn't ask if you're ready. He simply tells you what to do. That's when you understand your protection has an expiration date. The boy's name is Kian. He's only 9. His eyes are too large for his face, and his hands tremble when he holds his utensils. You see him struggling with his studies. You see him avoiding eye contact. You remember the ache of those early days, the confusion, the cold. Aiden comes to you after dinner and says, help him, teach him, be gentle. You do, because you must. You sit beside him during prayers. You whisper translations during lessons. You show him how to fold his sheets without wrinkles. He begins to smile at you, trusts you. You don't touch him. You never would. But you feel something worse. You understand now how the cycle survives. The system doesn't break you all at once. It remakes you, slowly, precisely. You see it everywhere once your eyes adjust. In the way instructors favor boys with softer voices, in the way palace officials brush their hands over shoulders with lingering fingers, in how praise always carries a price. You see older students who laugh too loudly, who charm their way into privileges and never mention what they gave in return. You see others who go quiet, their eyes dim, their bodies present, but their minds lost somewhere far away. Some learn to weaponize what was done to them. They rise quickly. They get better clothes, more books, special attention. Others resist and disappear. You remember a boy named Levent, strong, sharp-minded. He once stood in front of the dormitory door and blocked an instructor from entering. He's had enough, he said, pointing to the boy behind him. The instructor said nothing. The next morning, Levent was gone. His belongings burned. His name scratched from the ledger. Not even a whisper remained. You tell yourself you'll survive differently. You won't resist like Levent, but you won't become like Aiden either. You'll find a middle path, invisible but intact. But even that illusion shatters. One night, a high-ranking official visits your floor. The supervisor bows. The other boys scatter. You're told to kneel. The official walks slowly, examining each face like a merchant studying marble statues. He stops in front of you. He lifts your chin with a single finger. His nails are perfectly clean. His eyes unreadable. Pretty, he says. He turns to the supervisor. He'll dine upstairs tonight. That sentence is a sentence. There is no refusal. No escape. You're washed, dressed in fresh linens, your hair oiled, your wrists perfumed. You're escorted through corridors you've never seen before. The walls here are even more ornate, the air thicker, the silence more dangerous. You sit at a low table across from the man. You're served meats and rice you've never tasted. He tells you to eat. You do. He asks about your studies. You recite a verse from the Quran. He nods approvingly. Then he says, "Come closer." What follows is not a memory. It is an absence. You remember the candlelight, the silk, the scent of rose oil, then darkness, then the sound of your own heartbeat pulsing in your ears like thunder beneath water. When you return to your bed that night, no one looks at you. No one speaks. You are not the same. You begin to understand that survival is not about staying untouched. It's about hiding the places where you've been touched, even from yourself. You stop speaking to Kian. You withdraw. You become quieter, faster, more obedient. You earn privileges, better food, private tutoring, extra prayer time. They say you're flourishing. You know you're rotting from the inside out. Your thoughts become thinner. You forget what your mother's voice sounded like. You forget the shape of your father's hands. You forget your old name not because you want to, but because your mind starts protecting you by erasing you. Sometimes you catch your reflection in the polished brass plates used for meals. You don't see yourself. You see something built, too polished, controlled. You tell yourself, I am still here, I am still human. But the echo inside you grows quieter. You see Kian walking beside Aiden now. You say nothing. That's the final lesson. Silence isn't survival, it's surrender. And yet, what choice do you have? You become efficient. That's the word instructors start to use when they talk about you. Efficient, controlled, promising. No longer a problem to manage, but a tool to direct. You wake before the call to prayer. You fold your sheets with perfect corners. You speak when addressed, bow when expected, answer exactly as trained. You no longer dream of escape. You dream of predictability, of knowing what comes next. The boys who arrive now look like ghosts, hollow-eyed, shivering, stuttering their native tongues. You don't approach them. You don't comfort them. You know what kindness costs. You know what it invites. You've learned that being invisible is safer than being good. Once a younger boy slipped during morning drill. His foot caught the edge of the step and he fell forward, scraping his chin across the cold stone. Blood pooled at his collarbone. No one moved. Not even you. The guards watched to see what you'd do. You looked straight ahead, unmoved. That was the test. You passed. Your name is used more often now, not your birth name, but the one they gave you, the one the palace recognizes. When it's called, you rise. You speak clearly. You lower your eyes at the right moments. You become the kind of boy who gets selected for recitations, the kind of boy who gets assigned to serve guests in the minor courts. They reward you with small freedoms, an extra piece of fruit at dinner, an extra page from a poetry book, 10 minutes in the garden under supervision. But even rewards are shackles. You learn that the cost of comfort is conformity. You see Aiden less. He is older now, too old to stay in the dormitories. He moves through the palace like a shadow, always just out of sight, always following someone else. You don't speak when your paths cross. He doesn't expect you to. That's part of the arrangement. The past becomes a silence you both agree to preserve. One evening, while cleaning the small library near the southern hall, you hear muffled laughter. Two boys, one younger, one not, disappear behind the curtain near the study alcove. You don't investigate. You don't interrupt. You place the books on the shelves, dust the window ledge, and pretend the silence is complete. That's how the system works. Everyone sees. No one speaks. Another boy, Sammy, is rising through the ranks quickly. He is charming, fluent, graceful in every movement. Officials smile when he enters. Some touch his cheek too softly. You avoid his gaze. You recognize the light in his eyes. It's the same light they tried to burn out of you, and now they praise him for keeping it alive. You wonder how long he'll last. One night, you find him crying alone behind the baths. You don't ask why. You sit beside him without speaking. After a while, he whispers, I don't know who I am anymore. You don't respond, because you do know who he is. He's what you were 3 years ago, and what you'll still be 3 years from now. You learn to speak in layers. Out loud, you say what they want to hear. Inside, you keep your thoughts hidden in invisible ink. Only you can read them. Only you remember how to hold them without shattering.